Hey everyone, my name is James and welcome back to Chippy Gaming. So today, we're back for round 2 of our Master Mode Summoning Adventure. So for those that are out of the loop, what we're trying to do is see if it's possible to complete Master Mode Terraria using the new and improved Summoner class that was built upon quite heavily with the launch of Terraria 1.4. In part 1, we managed to whip our way through the Eye of Cthulhu, the Eater of Worlds, Queen Bee, Skeletron, and even Tier 1 of the Old One's army. But the road ahead is still quite long, and this is only part 2, so make sure to hit subscribe today so that you don't miss the finale, part 3, sometime next week. A lot of hours went into this. I really hope you enjoy it, but do stick around because throughout the video I do give a lot of tips that should help speed up your adventure if you do decide to play the summoning class when you play Terraria 1.4. Just like before, a portion of this video will be sponsored by Rich Wallet, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Alright, so with that out the way, let's jump into part 2 of our Master Mode Summoning Adventure. Our adventure begins once again by doing a little bit of construction. Because I want to take use of the pylons, it was important to me to make sure we had a cavern town. I knew we'd be spending quite a bit of time in hell, so one of the things I did was I built it lower down so that when I teleport there, yeah, we're right above hell. I then also took the time to make a little town in the desert and even set up a big fishing pond so that I can do oasis biome fishing. Just like I did in part 1, I'm not going to be showing you all of the fishing that took place, but it required many hours of work. But the reason why we're setting up this fishing pond is so that we have the chance to fish up oysters. Oysters can sometimes give you pearls, and they can be turned into luck potions, and we'll be using the luck potions later on to try and get some of the more rarer drops. While on the subject of luck, I thought it'd be a fun time to do the Torch God. Now, this is technically kind of a mini-boss, kind of a mini-event, I'm not really too sure, but it gives you a brand new item that will automatically change your torches to match the biomes that you're in. I really don't know how luck works in Terraria, and I will be real, I don't ever think I'll ever get too invested into learning about it, because I kind of like the mysteriousness about it, so I assume that using the right torches will give me a little bit of good luck, and that's why I thought it was the right time to do this, because we are going to be going for rarer stuff in a little bit. So, with my 100th torch dodged, I managed to get myself the Torch God's Favor, which basically turns on a little feature next to your hotbar. Kind of cool. I then also took a little bit of time to set up a little fishing pond in the Corruption. I had a little area I was using before, but this is way better. And I even did one in the mushroom biome as well. To be truthful, I don't know why I did this. There's not much you can get from mushroom biome fishing, apart from armored cavefish, and we do need a lot of buffs in this series. So with the boring stuff completed, it was now time to take on the Wall of Flesh. So for this run, I did join Hellbridge Gang. I think by now, a lot of you know I like water walking potions. But what we're going to be doing is using the Ballista Staff to have a little bit of extra damage when fighting the Wall of Flesh. What you can do is, if you have the mana, you can constantly spawn in the ballista, and the second it spawns, it will fire off an arrow. Now, if you leave it to its own devices, it will keep firing arrows, but it's a lot slower. So by using the Hellbridge, we always know that the Ballista Staff is going to aim where we want it to aim, rather than having like a harder time because it's deep down in the lava. So the Wall of Flesh fight was interesting, that's for sure. It's a lot different than doing it as a mage or even as a ranger. So, like I mentioned, we are basically walking back on ourselves, but trying to keep a nice distance so that our imps actually have a chance of firing at the Wall of Flesh. In this fight, I started the fight by having it aim at the lower eye, but I found myself just needing to just have it aim at the middle eye. I think that might be due to the way that my world is generated, so it might be different for you, but I found that the middle eye, although it didn't take as much damage, was the most consistent. What I really like about this fight is that in the final few seconds of the fight, you can see my hand is just filled with adrenaline as it's frantically trying to place down any of the Ballista Staffs it can just to get any remaining hits in. But with that, the Wall of Flesh has been defeated. Now let me tell you, this is where my knowledge of being a summoner in Terraria just went completely out the window. So before this, I'd never played a summoner's run in Terraria, And what I did know, I'd only known from watching people like Python back in the day. But I did know the first thing that you have to go and do is get a spider biome so that you can get yourself some spider armor. So using a danger sense potion, I immediately found one, which was pretty convenient. And I just basically blocked myself off from the rest of the world. And what we're going to do here is basically allow our summons to just do work. I had a small gap so that I could stand around and the summons could pass through, but the spiders couldn't shoot their web at me. And I just stayed there for a while, just allowing my summons to do their thing and using my whip to get just a little bit of extra damage. So what we're going for here is basically the spider staff to begin with. I did consider just waiting around and farming for the whole armor set and the staff at first. But then I thought, you know what, the spider staff is probably worth making and then I'll return. So once I had enough spider fangs, I headed up to the surface and I made myself the spider staff. Now, the spider staff is interesting. So what I knew about this staff is that it's most effective when you have it on a back wall, because then the spiders can actually latch on and it seems to do more consistent damage. This actually made a pretty big difference on how I thought I would fight the destroyer, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So after a quick reforge, I let my spiders go back to their thing, killing spiders, and this was just so much quicker. So if you're ever doing a summoner's run, make the staff, then make the armor. So after I'd collected 40 spider fangs, I decided to head back up to the surface to craft my spider armor. Now, knowing how quick this was to get, and at the very beginning of hard mode with no mining, it blows my mind that this was the only armor set you could get in 1.3.5 until post-Plantera. You know, having never played a summoner, that was very eye-opening for me. I can see why a lot of people used to complain about the lack of items now. I'd never really noticed. So, with my new armor, I decided it was time to farm out for the Wall of Flesh. So, for those that don't know, the Wall of Flesh has a brand new drop, and it is in fact a Summoner's Whip. Now, when farming, I was going into it for basically 2 drops. I really wanted a Summoner's Emblem, and I did want that whip, but I will say it wasn't the most essential thing in the world to me, because I knew of a way to get an even better whip, and it didn't require much farming. I did manage to get myself a Summoner's Emblem, and with that, I kind of thought, you know what, I'm done for farming the Wall of Flesh. So I decided to move on. One of the things I'm really enjoying is NPC happiness. Once I'd managed to get my emblem, I managed to buy a pair of leaf wings for only 63 gold. That is such a saving compared to the 1 platinum it used to be. Not fully sure about this one, but I do believe they may have nerfed these a little bit. I can't fully remember. So with 1.4, around this point you have a couple of options in regards to weapons. You can keep using the spider staff, or you can try and farm out for the blade staff in the Hallow. Now, I know that that is incredibly rare, and also kind of annoying to farm out for, because I farmed out for it a couple of weeks ago, just in my own personal run. So I decided that probably wasn't the best route for me, but then I also knew about the Sanguine Staff. Now, the Sanguine Staff is from the Dreadnoughtless that you fish up during the Blood Moon fishing. But after seeing just how tough this thing was, I decided once again, you know, this probably wasn't worth it. Here you are fishing in a rare event for a rare-ish item, going up against a boss that is kind of harder than some of the mechanical bosses. I decided that what I would do instead is go for the Pirate Staff. So the Pirate Staff is an interesting summon. It stays on the ground, but it does a considerable amount of damage. I like it a lot. So what I decided to do was set up a simple arena with just 1 layer of lava and a small box that I could hide in. So like most things, the pirate invasion can happen naturally in Terraria, but of course we want to speed that up. Now, to spawn in a pirate invasion, you need a treasure map, and a treasure map can be found from any enemy that dies in the ocean. However, it's not the most common thing in the world. A lot of you by now probably know that you can't get Souls of Night or Souls of Light from the King Slime. However, you can get treasure maps. So what I did is I killed a few King Slimes in the ocean, and after a couple of minutes, I had about 5 maps. Now, these maps were essential for farming out the pirate staff, but second to that, they were also great at just generating money. the pirate invasion will make you an absolute killing, especially if you sell off all the furniture. Plus you have the chance to get a discount card, a coin ring, and just a whole bunch more that makes just doing anything with money a lot easier in Terraria. So because our arena is so basic and pretty much relies on a couple of spiders and a good bit of lava, I knew that the only way we'd get the pirate staff is by actually killing pirates. Now, the pirate staff is a somewhat rare item if you can kill the pirate ships, which we won't be able to do, but it's a very rare item if you're relying on just the pirates. So right here you can see I've got a whole bunch of biome torches, but then I'm also using the luck potion. So the only downside about our very cheap and poorly made arena is that if you kill a pirate captain, it will now spawn like a spirit that will hunt you down. We can't kill that spirit because it's a bit too strong for us, and we're also inside of a box. So my method was let the pirates die on the floor, and if I saw a spirit, what I would do is I would basically fly back home and then come back to the box. So what happened at the very end of my first pirate invasion was completely unintentional. I forgot that this item was even added, but it had a pretty big effect when I went to kill the destroyer. So right at the very end of the event, a Flying Dutchman got caught on my arena, and my summons were actually able to take it out. I wasn't trying to farm for this, but this was great. We got a black spot, which is kind of like your own little Flying Dutchman that you ride around in. It's a really cool mount. It goes very fast, and you'll see me use it later on in this episode. So halfway through the second invasion, I managed to get myself a pirate staff. I would say that that is relatively quick, all things considered, and I'm going to put that down to luck potions. I think they have a pretty big role. So now that this section is over, I will say that out of all the things that I did in this episode, this was probably the thing I regret the most. I mean, the mount was absolutely fantastic, but I would say farming out for the pirate staff is a massive waste of time. It's not that good. I thought it was going to be good because I'd never really properly used it, but because of the fact that it stays on the ground, it doesn't really have much use when you consider that what you need to kill are 3 mechanical bosses that fly up high in the sky. So just a little word of warning there, probably not worth it. Today's video is once again proudly sponsored by Ridge Wallet. So if you've never heard me talk about Ridge before, Ridge are a manufacturer of these slim and genuinely very stylish wallets. I've been using mine for about a month now, and this is it. So this is the gunmetal grey titanium style, and I just love it. It holds up to 12 cards while remaining slim, and it even has this cash strap on the back, so if you're at a shop or a market that needs a note, you've got that on you. I've shown this before, but this is my old wallet. It's big, it's bulky, it's dad style, and it did do the job, but I really like that the Ridge wallet is, it's just a lot smaller. And that fits in my jeans better. While we're on the subject of dad style though, I did order a Ridge wallet for my dad. It's arriving for Father's Day, which is pretty convenient. Ridge actually have free worldwide shipping and handling, so I was able to send one of these to his door for free, which is kind of great in modern times, really. So what's also cool is they come with a lifetime guarantee, so it's kind of a gift for life, like having a child is. And I'm just really pleased. They have over 30,000 5-star reviews if you want to read more about this wallet right here. But if you do want to buy one, go to www.ridge.com/chippy and you can save 10%. There'll be a link to that down below or at the top of the comment section. But once again, thank you to Ridge for sponsoring this video and some of the others. I'm really grateful. But now let's get back to the Summoners run. So I think this might be my favourite part about playing as a summoner. Once all that was done, I only needed to do about 3 minutes of mining. I just needed to get enough mithril to get a mithril anvil to craft some of the hard mode items. But after that, no more hard mode mining. That's something that I've kind of grown to hate through replaying Terraria all of these years. Just the constant mining in hard mode. I'm really glad I was able to skip that. So once I returned to the surface, I noticed that it was raining, and this was perfect because one of the items I really wanted was a frost core. So I mentioned earlier that I wasn't too bothered about missing out on that whip from the Wall of Flesh. Well, you can actually get a cool whip. It's hard to say that and not giggle, but yeah, you can get a cool whip from the ice golem. And first time, I managed to get my frost core. So once I had the frost core, I basically needed to do a little bit of farming in the hallowed. Now, I did this for a couple of reasons. One, I thought maybe I'll get lucky and get that flying knife. But I knew that I wasn't too bothered about it. I wanted to try and do a summoner run that wasn't so reliant on really rare drops. But I think that's going to change with the Tiger Staff. So pretty quickly, I managed to get my Souls of Light. And then I headed to the Corruption. And even easier, using some spider summons, I was able to get 8 Souls of Night. So here it is, the Cool Whip. I love it. It's great. So it's like a regular whip, but it will summon out this little, kind of like this, I don't know, it's like a large snowflake, and it will bounce between enemies. I think it's pretty neat. So with my Cool Whip, I decided to go back to the Hallowed and make a nice little fishing spot. So like I mentioned, we would need a lot of buffs to make all of this work, especially with my skill level. So we've basically made this so that we can make life force potions in the future. So earlier in the video, I did mention how my knowledge of being a summoner in hard mode was very limited. But one thing I remembered from watching Python a couple of years ago is that it was possible to defeat the Destroyer as a summoner if you build an area with a nice amount of back wall and allowed your spiders to essentially latch on to the boss. So I went for that method here, and I will say this was another giant waste of time. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone because you need a very, very large area for this to do the work that you need it to do. So I found out that this was very ineffective, but there was something we could do with this area, which we didn't really need, that would have good results. So yeah, if it wasn't clear, I ended up dying to the Destroyer pretty fast, I would say. And then I decided to move on to the boss that I know I'm a lot better at, and that is Skeletron Prime. So you know how I said that we could use this arena to a better effect? Well, I'm using spiders again. So what I'm allowing the spiders to do here is to latch on, because we've targeted the boss, is to latch on to the head and stick onto it for as long as possible. So how I maneuver during Skeletron Prime is essentially what I would do with some of the Calamity mod bosses. I just go for the old circle approach. Now, your spiders will latch on for a decent amount of time, but occasionally they will find themselves just kind of floating around. And once they've started to float around, it's kind of hard to get them back onto the boss. So what we do is we return to the floor, the spiders hit the ground, and then they're able to use that platform to jump back up onto the boss and remain attached, which I found to be the best method here. So I would say, as a summoner, this Skeletron Prime fight was pretty easy once I got into the groove of moving around and avoiding some of those bombs. So for this fight, I'm not even using my whip, really. I'm just doing it occasionally if it gets too close. This fight is all about evasion, just making sure that you don't get hit too many times, and letting the spiders do their thing. Now, about halfway through, I realized that this was the fight for me. This was the one that was going to be, you know, the easy one for me. So what I decided to do is, after I had defeated the boss, I would just farm it out a couple of times so that I could get myself a new set of armor. But before we get to that, we have to show the very end of the fight. So, with that, Skeletron Prime was defeated. I would then go on to do it 2 more times, though, so that I had enough hallowed bars, because we can now make the brand new set of armor that was recently added in 1.4. So, for those that don't know, they did add a new variant to hallowed armor called the Hallowed's Hood, and this is for summoners. Now, how this works is, this armor will essentially increase your defense, but your minion damage is reduced. So this is more for people that need to tank a little bit more instead of just solely relying on just being able to dodge constantly. So with my fancy new armor and my red cape, which I obviously love because the Clothier also has a red cape, I decided it was time for the twins. So I highlighted Whitney the Steampunker there real quick, because not gonna lie, I was trying to get her murdered during the fight. So for those that don't know, Whitney the Steampunker has an exclusive drop, and it's a guitar called Ivy. And it sounds kind of nice, and I thought, you know what, if I am fighting this big mechanical boss, maybe I could get a guitar out of it. Unfortunately, I didn't, but I did kill her later on. So for this fight, I'm using my spiders once again. No need for a back wall here. What I'm doing is I'm essentially either allowing the spiders to jump on using the platform below, or I'm manually spawning the spiders on top of that eyeball. So my strategy at first was to lower the health of the red eyeball. Now, when I play Terraria, you may do it differently, but I always kill the green one first and then the red one. So I wanted to reduce the health of the red so that when it came to time to killing the red one, it would just be, you know, a little bit faster. So after lowering that health, I moved over to the green one. Now, this was honestly just such a breeze. This is the kind of fight I needed at this point. I played a lot of hours by this point, and I needed an easy win. So what I'm doing is I'm just circling the boss. I'm avoiding some of those cursed flames that are coming my way. Occasionally, the spiders will detach from the boss, especially when it begins to charge at you, because it moves a little too fast for the spiders. But then after that, I'm spawning the spiders back on and allowing it to do its thing. As you can imagine, halfway through that boss's health bar, it turned into its second phase. So once again, I'm allowing the spiders to latch on. Now, they don't get to latch on nearly as much in this phase because the boss is moving quite frantically. It's charging a lot more frequently. So this does become a bit of an endurance test. I feel like my skills with the twins are definitely better than they've ever been, so it wasn't too bad here. But I am allowing it to charge and then respawning my spiders, and eventually, you know, it does go down and it's defeated. So now we have the red eyeball, and as you can imagine, it's the exact same thing. I struggle with the red eyeball a lot more than the green one, and it's because of that frantic laser phase. When I was playing the older versions of Terraria, I realized just how bad I am at this fight when it comes to this phase without using any kind of double dash. I do rely on that dash way too much in this part, but after a while, my spiders are attached, and then the fight is done. One thing I found quite cool here is I did get the pet. I love these Master Mode pets. I really do feel like it makes Master Mode a little bit more worthwhile. So once the fight was done, I took my hallowed bars and souls of sight, and I crafted up an optic staff. Now, for me, this is a bit of a game changer because it's going to allow me to defeat the destroyer without relying on a giant area, using back walls and using spiders. But I just done 2 mechanical bosses, so I thought at this point, I really kind of needed a break, so I moved over to the jungle. So in the jungle, I had 2 priorities. Number 1, I needed to make my Plantera arena. I thought I would do this in my downtime because I actually find it kind of annoying to make a Plantera arena. I think when you replay Terraria, there are some moments that are more mundane than others, and for me, making this arena is always pretty mundane. But the good thing about being here is that it allowed a lot of life fruit to grow in. So by the time I want to do the destroyer, I have full health thanks to the life fruit. Now, because we haven't defeated the destroyer, we don't have any Plantera bulbs growing in, but I do now have an arena and a lot more health. So now it's time for the destroyer, the third and final mechanical boss, and the one I would say is probably the hardest as a summoner. So for an arena, I'm using the one that I spent way too much time on that doesn't really do anything, but I added in a row of grey stone so that if it fires a laser and it's underneath that grey stone, then it will mean that the lasers won't hit me. I don't think this really had an impact, but I thought I would say it anyway. So for this fight, I'm using the optic staff, and I'm also using the brand new hallowed whip. I don't really know if I prefer the hallowed whip or the cool whip. I think they're both probably about the same for me. I know for this fight, you get extra damage if you can whip the destroyer and then allow your summons to actually hit as well. But the cool whip does spawn a nice little snowflake, and that snowflake will latch onto the boss and bounce between its segments. So I think for this fight, it probably doesn't matter either way. I had the hallowed bars to spare. So for this fight, I'm fighting it how I normally would do the destroyer, and that is try and kill the initial round of probes. This is probably the hardest part of the fight because this is when you're going to have the most lasers and the most probes. And once I've defeated those, I decided it was time to pull back from the boss a little bit. I was kind of low on health. I didn't really have time to take a healing potion. So I'm basically relying on my pirate ship to move me along quickly, left and right. So the speed from this mount and the consistency of it does make this fight a lot easier because it does mean that evading those lasers becomes a lot easier. And that is what you want with this fight. But what I'm doing is I'm healing up, I'm dipping back down, I'm spawning a few probes, killing a few probes, and I'm basically doing the destroyer the way it was intended to do, which is slow and steady, really. That's how the destroyer was designed, and that's kind of how it played out as a summoner. I think I could have easily have lost this fight so many times if I didn't have that life fruit. This wouldn't have been possible, I wouldn't say, for my skill level. So I'm glad it all came together in the end, but this was a challenge. So then, after a very long fight that pretty much took up the whole night, I was able to take down the destroyer. And once again, I got the destroyer pet. Very thankful for this because I think it's one of my favorite new pets in the game. I think it looks so good. So this series was originally going to be 2 parts, but I didn't realize just how long it would take to take on the mechanical bosses. So it's now a 3-parter. So around this point, I realized, oh yeah, they added a new boss in 1.4, the Queen Slime. I'd completely forgotten that they'd added her. The good thing is, at least, she doesn't drop anything of use for us, so it was completely optional anyway. But to round off today's episode, I thought let's do the Queen Slime, because she's a pretty great fight. I really like her. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically allowing my my optic staff to target the boss, and I'm just basically evading the fight, and that's pretty much it. So while you lot are watching this fight, I thought I would use this time to talk about some of the stuff I actually learned while making this. So, like I mentioned before, I'd never played Summoner in Terraria. I'd only used it as a side accessory. And I didn't realize just how quick, but also brutally hard, being a Summoner in hard mode is. You know, getting Spider Armor straight away was pretty great. But one of the things that I really wish that I had done is farm out the Old One's army in pre-hard mode. So if you defeat the Old One's army in pre-hard mode, you get yourself 5 Defender medals. Now, if I'd have done that 5 times to get 25, I could have unlocked a brand new Ballista Staff that would have helped me immensely in hard mode. So what I didn't know is that once you have defeated the event only the once, you can use any of the weapons outside of the event. So going into it, I assumed that it wouldn't be worth farming out for those Defender medals because I would need to defeat Tier 2 to use the Tier 2 weapons outside of the event. But that's actually not the case. If you have the medals, you can go and buy it straight after the first mechanical boss, and then use it to your heart's content. So there's a little tip if you're playing as a summoner. Basically, grind out at the very start because I think it would have been really worthwhile. Like having a Ballista Staff for extra constant damage, yeah, I think it would have been great. So all in all, so far, I've put in a lot of hours into this project. It's a new format for me. So if you got to this part of the video and you want to support me, please take the time to give the video a big fat thumbs up. It would really help out. And maybe if you are new around here, consider subscribing to Chippy Gaming. Here on Chippy Gaming, we talk all things Terraria. So if you like Terraria, more than likely you're going to like some of the other content on the channel. Once again, big shout out to Ridge Wallet for sponsoring today's video. But with that out the way, guys, have a fantastic day. Stay safe, wash your hands, have fun in Terraria 1.4. And I'll see you very soon for the 3rd and final part of this summoning adventure. Peace.